Um, Pomegranate's a powerful food. A lot of you have probably heard about the benefits of pomegranate. High antioxidants. Besides it just being one of the tastiest fruits ever. I just love the taste of pomegranates. However, just like we've always been talking about, you're buying pomegranate at Whole Foods or wherever, it doesn't grow around here. So, you know, it's shipped in from an arid climate somewhere because they don't grow here. So it's picked before it's ripe, it's sent here, yeah, it might taste good to us, but you're not really getting the full nutritional value. So if you want to get the true benefits of pomegranate, again, it's about your source, knowing your source. And there's a lot of health food stores that got pomegranate pills and stuff like that. It's just very weak. The pomegranate I have, you guys don't have a pomegranate, do you? Okay. The pomegranate that I have is from North American Herb & Spice. It's called Pomo Power. And they have a few of these types of products like that, but it's a liquid concentrated pomegranate. And same thing, you can just throw it in a smoothie or a shake or just make a drink out of it. It's amazing. The anti-cancer effects are well known, specifically for breast and colon cancer. It's been well researched and well studied.
What's cool about that company too is they let the pomegranate fully mature before they harvest it and process it and keep the integrity of the nutrients.
Yeah, but that's always the key. That's where the nutrients are. Right when that fruit's ripe, that's when you gotta pick it. You want to get the whole back.
And this is a kind of a good opportunity to incorporate the doctrine of signatures.
Sure.
Is anybody familiar with that term, the doctrine of signatures? It's basically, if you look at a plant, it kind of tells you what it does. For instance, a walnut looks kind of like a brain. You crack it open, and it happens to have the right fatty acids and nutrients to nourish the brain. With pomegranate, what do you think that would be good for? If you crack one open, what would you see? It's like blood cells, isn't it? Little tiny blood cells that are red, and that's called the doctrine of signatures, and that's how ancient people kind of devised a system to figure out what foods did for you. So you can kind of use that approach when you're looking at vegetables in the produce department.
A couple other fun examples are, maybe you can guess them. Carrot. If you slice a carrot, what does it look like? Eye. It's kind of like an eye. How about an avocado? You cut an avocado. It's a good one. Ovary.
What's that look like?
Doesn't it? It's actually a great food for the female reproductive system. So, all right. So pumpkin seeds. How are we doing on time? Okay. Well, just because we got to make a smoothie and all this other stuff, so I just want to make sure. Pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are, again, I don't know if you can necessarily call them a superfood. I mean, there's so many great things out there. There's so many great nuts and seeds. But pumpkin is kind of special because it has a lot of nutrients in it that a lot of other nuts and seeds don't have in high amounts. For example, it has very high amounts of zinc and magnesium. Just like we were talking about, iodine, zinc, and magnesium are two things that we just aren't getting in our diet, not getting near enough of, and they're two very critical minerals. So pumpkin seeds is one way to knock that out. There's raw pumpkin seeds you can eat, and then again, North American Herb & Spice, they have a concentrated pumpkin oil. It's called pumpkin oil. It's amazing for men that have prostate issues. The high zinc content, magnesium content, and its anti-inflammatory effects are off the charts. Any guy who has any kind of a prostate issue, inflammation of the prostate, trouble urinating, things like that, the pumpkin oil works in and of itself without anything else. It just works that good. It's also excellent anti-parasite product. You might have heard of pumpkin seeds being used in parasite formulas as well. Anything to add on that?
Okay. I got a question.
Yep.
You said for men, especially for men, what about prostate cancer?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, because not to get into a long conversation about cancer, but there's always a cause for cancer. So there's some type of infection or bacterial infection or viral infection or, something is causing that to happen in the body. So yeah, pumpkin's going to be great for that because pumpkin has an affinity for the prostate. Okay, so because when you put the pumpkin in your body, it has that inherent intelligence that it's going to heal the prostate. So I don't care where I have cancer. I want a food that I know is going to feed that organ or that gland and go right to that area and start working. So absolutely.
Yeah, it's so common, prostate cancer. We always hear about that.
Yep, and we know for a fact that prostate cancer is, for the most part, dietary related. It's a proven fact. So, quinoa. I don't even sell quinoa, but I love quinoa. I think it's an awesome food. It's called like a pseudo grain because it's not really a grain, it's more of a seed. Even though the Incans, I think it was, yeah, the Incans called it the mother grain, but it's not really a grain. So what's great about that is there's so many people now dealing with gluten issues, gluten intolerances. People are eating gluten-free. Quinoa is, I think, probably the best option if you're trying to eat gluten-free. So if you're not familiar with quinoa, you want to get to know it. And even if you're not avoiding gluten, quinoa is an amazing, amazing, powerful food. Very rich, one of those all-around foods, again, very rich in vitamins and minerals and amino acids. It's a great source of protein.
Cooks quickly.
Cooks quickly. But it actually has a complete amino acid profile, which a lot of grains don't. You usually have to combine them with beans or some kind of like vegetable to get a complete amino acid profile. Quinoa doesn't.
And I'm going to pass this around. This is a recipe for a quinoa salad that is super awesome.
And another note, people who have kind of candida or yeast overgrowth, which a lot of people deal with and don't even know it, it doesn't feed yeast, which is really cool. It doesn't feed candida or any fungus in the body.
And it's a great, great replacement for pasta. One of the hardest things is when you try to start eating healthy and you hear that you shouldn't be eating all these processed foods. Well, one of the foods people eat a lot of is pasta. And almost all pasta it's processed, obviously. Even if it's whole grain pasta, it still obviously has to be processed in some way to create this noodle shape because it doesn't just grow like that in nature. So a good alternative to that is quinoa. And I've been using it recently and it's amazing. I've been doing like grass-fed beef with quinoa instead of pasta and like fresh marinara sauce from my friend's garden. And it is the best pasta I've ever had in my life. So really it's a great thing to incorporate in place of your pasta or any kind of your processed noodles and things like that. You can use it for a lot of different things.
And something to be aware of about grains and or seeds in general is there's compounds that protect the seed. So these things are designed to survive forest fires and survive nature, and all what it has to offer. So basically, soaking these things releases compounds like phytic acid, and then cooking them is a very wise thing to do because it has a lot of anti-nutrients. Again, it's a defense mechanism. None of us want to be eaten, plants don't want to be eaten, nothing wants to be eaten. So it has protective barriers as much as it can, and we call this like phytic acid, and there's different nutrients that basically, or anti-nutrients that protect the seed, and will leach calcium, will leach zinc out of your body, will actually demineralize you if you don't know how to deactivate that. So it's as simple as just soaking it for a few hours. Do it in the morning. You know you're going to have quinoa that night. Just soak it in water. Come back home.
I'm really glad he said that because I don't know if that's on the recipe to soak first, but that is very, very important. And that goes for a lot of nuts and seeds, almonds and walnuts, and it's a great idea to soak them overnight. What's that? I don't know who didn't get jogulan tea, but we'll pass it around because that's our next subject here.
Say 3 or 4 hours or longer, or 5 longer?
At least a couple hours. The easiest way to do it is just soak it overnight. But
yeah, the longer the better, honestly.
Yeah, and you can sprout it like in 48 hours if you just replace the water and it'll grow sprouts if you need it. People are into sprouting, so. But they know that if you're into sprouting. Anybody else need jogulan tea? Good.
And what we're doing with understanding all these foods is understanding that everything has a beneficial and a negative quality depending on how it's used, where it's sourced. All these things matter. So that's where our education comes in, how to intelligently use foods for our benefit and nourishing our body.
So getting into the herb part of it now, does anyone have any question about any of the superfoods real quick? No? Okay, moving on. Herbs. I'm glad there was a couple adaptogens in here. Jogulan is probably one of my favorite. I've always known it as jogulan. You most commonly call it gynostemma. Like we said before, there's a lot of nicknames to jogulan because it's so widely known and used. It is, you want to talk about a powerful plant that's a weed, it's a weed. I mean, this thing, if you plant it in your yard, I have friends in Vegas who would plant a little jogulan plant in their backyard, and the next year it had literally taken over their backyard and grown off the side of their house and into the front yard. I mean, it is a weed. But as Ralph Waldo Emerson said, a weed is but a plant whose virtues have yet to be discovered. I doubt it. You might be able to grow it in a pot, in a controlled environment, but it's not going to grow crazy. Have you grown it here, or know anyone who's grown it here? So jogulin, also known as the immortality herb, it's an adaptogen. Brandon kind of touched on that in general, but in traditional Chinese medicine, the Chinese have been studying these herbs and these plants for thousands of years. And you want to learn the best knowledge about herbs, traditional Chinese medicine should be one of your first stops. And jogulin is one of the herbs that they